I didn't realize how slowly a person can lose themselves until I caught a glimpse of my own reflection one morning and barely recognized the look in my eyes. It wasn't exhaustion or sadness. It was something thinner, quieter, like someone had been siphoning pieces of me for months and I'd only just noticed the weight missing. That's the part that scared me the most, how subtle it had all been. My life used to be pretty simple. I worked steady hours at a small hardware store, rented a modest place on the edge of town, and kept mostly to myself. I wasn't chasing anything big. I liked routines, the predictability of shelves that stayed where you put them, and tools that did what they were built to do. When I started seeing Megan, I thought I was finally adding something good to my life. She was charming in that soft, deliberate way. Never loud, never demanding, at least at first. The early signs didn't look like signs. They looked like tiny favors, little requests that didn't feel like much on their own. She'd say she forgot her wallet and ask if I could cover lunch. She'd mention needing a ride somewhere, just this once. She'd make comments about how her ex never supported her in the ways she really needed. None of it felt malicious, but I started noticing how she never forgot her wallet with her friends, never asked them to rearrange their day for her. It was always me. I told myself I was being generous. That was the story I kept repeating because it sounded better than the truth, that she had begun to expect things from me without ever having to ask. When she moved in, it wasn't even a discussion. She started sleeping over more often, leaving clothes, slowly filling drawers. One night she said, "I'm basically here all the time anyway," and I didn't push back. I remember thinking that maybe this was what relationships were like. Maybe I was supposed to just adjust. But the tension started building in small, almost invisible ways. She criticized my habits with a laugh, as if making fun of me made it sweet. She'd rearrange things around my home and act confused when I mentioned it. If I said I didn't like something, she'd tell me I was too sensitive. If I asked for space, she'd respond with a disappointed sigh that made me feel like I'd failed some unspoken test. The worst part was how normal it all seemed in the moment. She'd twist things gently, calmly, making me question whether I really remembered events the way I thought I did. If I got frustrated, she'd tilt her head, give this soft, patient smile and say, "I didn't think you were the kind of person who gets worked up over nothing." And just like that, I'd shrink, apologizing for even bringing it up. By the time I realized how much control she had slipped into, it felt like she'd been silently rearranging my entire life, the same way she rearranged my drawers. One small thing at a time, never enough to notice until everything was out of place. I kept telling myself it wasn't that bad, that she cared about me, that I was overthinking it. But the heaviness in my chest kept growing, pressing harder every time I ignored another red flag. The moment that finally pushed the tension into something sharper wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud or messy. It was a conversation, one that seemed harmless at first. But looking back, that was the moment I felt the first true crack in whatever power she thought she had over me. The moment I realized I needed to pay attention, because something about her words didn't just feel wrong, it felt planned. And that was when I finally understood. Manipulation doesn't arrive like a storm. It creeps in like a draft through a cracked window, unnoticed until the whole room is cold. The breaking point started with a sentence so casual I almost missed the weight behind it. We were sitting at my small kitchen table, eating the takeout I'd paid for, again, when Megan said almost thoughtfully, "You know, you're lucky I'm patient with you. Most people wouldn't put up with how unreliable you can be." I froze mid-bite. Unreliable? I worked full-time, paid every bill on time, covered almost every expense she accidentally forgot about, but she kept going before I could even process it. "You get overwhelmed so easily," she said, stirring her noodles like this was some gentle observation. "It must be hard for you. I try not to hold it against you." There was something rehearsed in her tone, a softness meant to disguise the blade underneath. And the terrible thing was, I felt myself start to believe her for a second, that maybe she was right. Maybe I was the problem. But then she added, "Honestly, I don't know what you'd do without me." That's when something inside me finally snapped awake. I didn't argue, didn't raise my voice. I just watched her for the rest of the meal, every word she said clicking into place, like pieces of a puzzle I'd been too tired to solve. The exaggerated sympathy, the guilt tripping, the quiet erosion of my confidence. She didn't want a partner. She wanted someone easy to steer. Over the next few weeks, the manipulation sharpened. If I came home tired, she'd say I was emotionally unavailable. If I disagreed with her, she'd claim I was acting unstable. If I made plans without her, she'd say it proved I didn't care enough. Each line was polished, practiced, delivered like she'd been saving it for the perfect moment. I started noticing patterns. She never acted like this around other people. With friends, she was bright and warm. With me, she wore a different face. Cool, subtly disappointed, always implying I was just a little bit insufficient. And every time I tried to call something out, she'd twist it until I apologized. The final straw wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, which somehow made it worse. I'd picked up an extra shift to cover some repairs the apartment needed. When I got home late, exhausted, she was sitting on the couch with her arms crossed, staring at me like I'd broken some sacred rule. "I can't believe," she said, slow and deliberate, "that you chose work over me, again." Work that kept a roof over both of us. Work she didn't contribute to at all. When I reminded her about the repairs, she rolled her eyes. "You always have an excuse. Sometimes I wonder if you're even capable of being a real partner." There it was, not even disguised anymore. Something inside me settled, calm, clear, unshakable. I didn't argue, I didn't defend myself. I just nodded slightly and let her think she'd won that little exchange. Let her feel confident, because for the first time I wasn't confused. I wasn't doubting myself. I saw the manipulation for exactly what it was, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. That night, while she slept, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the weight of months pressing down on me. She had chipped away at my self-worth, rearranged my life, and convinced me her voice mattered more than my own. And she believed she'd shaped me into someone too weak to push back. But she was wrong. I wasn't planning revenge out of anger. I was planning it because I was done letting her script my life. I was done being her quiet project. And when I finally got up from that bed, I knew with absolute certainty she had crossed her last line. Once I stopped reacting to Megan's comments, her confidence grew even faster. She mistook my silence for surrender, which made her careless. It also made it easier to observe her without her noticing. I started paying attention, real attention, to what she said, what she did, and what she conveniently left out. If she wanted to craft a version of me that looked helpless, I decided I'd quietly build a version of her that finally told the truth. The first step was simple: stop covering for her. For months, she'd been using my money, my time, and my home as if they were her default resources. So I began setting boundaries she didn't notice right away. I moved my important documents to a locked drawer. I stopped giving her cash when she claimed she forgot her purse. I kept receipts for every bill and every repair. Nothing dramatic, just quiet order replacing chaos. Her irritation started surfacing in small flashes. She'd ask for a favor I used to do automatically, and I'd respond with a calm, "Not today." She'd question me about my schedule, and I'd give shorter answers. She'd make a snide comment, and instead of defending myself, I'd just look at her until she got uncomfortable. The more I pulled back, the more she pushed. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. One Saturday, she insisted we go to a local cafe to talk about how disconnected I'd been lately. I agreed, knowing exactly what was coming. She chose a crowded patio, public enough for her to play the sweet, concerned partner while subtly tearing me down. She launched into her script the second we sat. "You've been so distant," she said with a soft, pained voice. "I just want us to be healthy, but you need to admit how unstable you've been." There it was, the performance. I didn't interrupt. I just let her talk, let her weave a story that painted me as overwhelmed, confused, dependent. Each sentence was smooth, practiced. She'd clearly rehearsed it, but she didn't notice the couple sitting behind her, the ones close enough to hear every word. She didn't notice how loud she got when she leaned in, emphasizing my supposed flaws as if she were offering some tragic confession to a concerned friend. When she finally stopped to sip her drink, I kept my voice low and steady. "Megan, I'm glad you said all that. Really." She blinked, thrown off by my calmness. "Because I've been documenting everything." Her face didn't change immediately. It was like her brain couldn't process the words fast enough. Documenting what? She asked. All the comments, all the put-downs, the financial stuff, the way you talk to me in private versus in front of other people. I tapped my phone gently against the table. You've been very consistent. For a split second, real panic flickered across her expression. You're twisting things, she whispered, voice tight. No, I said. You've been twisting things. I just stopped participating. She opened her mouth, but I continued quietly. I've spoken to the landlord. The lease is in my name only, and I've already arranged a date for you to pick up your things. The shock on her face wasn't loud. It was silent, heavy, like the air had dropped out of the room. You can't just kick me out, she said, voice rising. I can, I said gently. And I have. You've been using me, Megan. I'm just finally stepping out of your script. People nearby had begun to glance over. She noticed. She hated that they noticed. She pushed back her chair abruptly, muttering that I was pathetic and overreacting, and stormed off the patio. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. My revenge wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was a simple dismantling of the control she believed she had, one quiet, deliberate piece at a time. And as I watched her walk away, I knew exactly what came next. Not chaos, not conflict. Closure, the kind she'd never expected me to find. Megan didn't move out quietly, but she moved out. The day she came to gather her things, she brought a friend with her, someone she must have hoped would intimidate me, or, at the very least, witness her version of events. I didn't engage. I kept everything calm, straightforward, and already boxed. She barely stepped inside before realizing I'd packed her belongings neatly and labeled each box. No drama left for her to feed on. She tried one last time, though. As she stood in the doorway holding a stack of shirts, she said, You know you're making a huge mistake. Nobody else is going to put up with the way you are. I nodded, not because I agreed, but because I didn't need her words anymore. That's fine, I told her. I'll take my chances. Something in her expression froze, like she'd thrown a familiar hook into water and for the first time felt no resistance at all. When she left, the apartment felt impossibly quiet. Not empty exactly, but restored, like someone had finally turned off a radio that had been buzzing in the background for months. I stood in the living room and let the silence settle. It didn't feel lonely. It felt clean. Over the next weeks, fallout started trickling in from people we both knew. A mutual acquaintance stopped by the store and mentioned Megan had been telling everyone I'd snapped on her. But when they spoke to me and saw the steady way I carried myself, the story didn't match. Word spread, slowly but steadily, that things hadn't been what she claimed. Without the performance, without the audience she relied on, her narrative fell apart. Her friend who'd come with her during the move-out eventually apologized to me. He said, I didn't realize how she talks to people until that day. I'm sorry. I didn't need the apology, but it felt like confirmation that the truth had a way of surfacing without me forcing it. The biggest change, though, was internal. I started noticing how often I held my breath around small decisions, afraid of displeasing someone who wasn't even there anymore. I'd stand by the fridge debating dinner and feel that old instinct, to second guess, to anticipate criticism. But then I'd catch myself, let out a slow breath, and choose what I wanted. It sounds small, but reclaiming those tiny choices felt like rebuilding muscle I hadn't used in a long time. I cleaned the apartment thoroughly, not to erase her, but to recenter myself. I rearranged the furniture the way I liked it. I bought a new lamp that cast a soft glow at night. I invited my sister over for dinner, something Megan always discouraged for reasons I now understood had nothing to do with privacy and everything to do with control. The night after my sister left, I sat on the couch with the new lamp beside me, the room warm and quiet. For the first time in months, I felt the absence of tension, like someone had untied a knot inside me. I realized how long I'd been living under a weight that wasn't mine to carry. My revenge hadn't been about humiliating her or proving anything to anyone else. It had been the act of removing myself from her influence, of refusing to participate in the narrative she wrote for me. It was quiet, steady, and final. The moral I walked away with was simple. Manipulation grows in silence, but so does clarity. And once you start listening to your own voice again, the people who tried to rewrite it lose all their power. I didn't get back the months I'd spent untangling myself from her, but I got something better, a life that finally felt like mine again.